What are you doing with that key? We're taking what we're owed. He told us where it was.
Let's go, they're coming.
Marcus Chin wasn't asleep. His eyes were closed, his breathing slow and rhythmic. But beneath those eyelids, his mind was sharp and calculating. On the table beside him sat an envelope, open, careless, stuffed with $100 bills. $5,000 deliberately placed like bait in a trap. Outside his Boston bakery office, rain hammered against the windows. Inside, the warmth from the ovens below filled the air with the scent of fresh bread. Marcus had built an empire from flour and determination, but success had made him bitter. He trusted no one. Today, he would test his newest employee's son. A 7-year-old boy named Eli had been brought to work because schools were closed. Marcus heard the soft footsteps approaching. The child was alone now, standing beside the chair, inches from the money. Marcus waited for the inevitable grab. But what happened next would shatter everything he believed about human nature. Share this story to 50,000 people if you're enjoying this story of unexpected kindness. Hit that like button and subscribe for more inspiring tales. Drop a comment telling us what you think Eli will do next. Marcus Chun was 75 years old and worth more than most people could imagine. His bakery chain, Chin's Golden Loaf, stretched across 30 states. What started as a single storefront in Boston's Chinatown had grown into a business empire worth hundreds of millions. He owned the buildings, the distribution network, and even the farms that grew his wheat. But Marcus had learned a painful truth over the decades. Money attracted vultures, not friends. His children visited twice a year, always with their hands out. His business partners smiled while secretly trying to steal his recipes and customers. Even his own employees had betrayed him, stealing supplies, faking overtime, taking cash from registers. The last head baker had copied Marcus's famous sourdough starter and sold it to a competitor. Marcus had grown cold. He viewed every person as a potential thief, every relationship as a transaction waiting to go bad. If you gave people a chance to take something without consequences, he believed they would take it every single time. So Marcus created tests. He would leave money in obvious places, on his desk, in an employee locker room, beside the cash register after closing. He installed hidden cameras everywhere. He watched and waited, collecting evidence of human greed like a scientist studying rats. Today was another experiment. The Boston rain fell in sheets outside the converted warehouse that housed his flagship bakery and corporate office. The ground floor held massive industrial ovens where hundreds of loaves baked every hour. The second floor was Marcus's private domain, his office, his sitting room, his sanctuary. Marcus sat in his favorite leather chair, positioned by the window overlooking the bakery floor below. The chair was worn comfortable from years of use. Beside him, on the small wooden table, sat the envelope. Inside, $5,000 in crisp bills deliberately spilling out. Marcus had staged everything perfectly. He wore his reading glasses low on his nose. A book lay open in his lap. To anyone watching, he looked like an elderly man who had dozed off while reading, carelessly leaving his money exposed. The rain outside provided the perfect cover for his breathing, masking any irregularity. Marcus kept his chest rising and falling in the steady rhythm of sleep. But his ears were sharp, listening for every sound. He had researched his newest cleaning employee thoroughly. Her name was Rachel Kim, a 32-year-old widow. Her husband had died in a construction accident 3 years ago, leaving her with crushing medical debt and a son. The background check showed late rent payments, maxed out credit cards, and a second job on weekends. Rachel was desperate. Marcus knew desperate people made desperate choices. Today, Rachel had begged the floor manager, Helen Torres, to let her bring her 7-year-old son to work. The schools across Boston had closed due to the storm, flooding in several neighborhoods, power lines down, emergency repairs needed everywhere. Rachel had no family nearby, no money for a babysitter, and couldn't afford to miss a day's pay. Helen had reluctantly agreed, warning Rachel that if Marcus saw the child, both of them would be fired on the spot. Marcus had strict rules. No children in the workplace, no exceptions. But Marcus knew. He always knew what happened in his buildings. He had approved Helen's decision himself, secretly, because it gave him the perfect opportunity. He heard the door to his office open. Two sets of footsteps, one regular, one lighter and smaller. Rachel's voice came in an urgent whisper. "Stay here, Eli. Sit in that corner by the bookshelf. Don't move. Don't touch anything. Don't make a sound. Mr. Chun is sleeping, and if you wake him, Mommy will lose her job. Do you understand?" "Yes, Mommy." The boy's voice was soft, almost frightened. "I have to go clean the conference room on the 3rd floor. I'll be back in 10 minutes. Please, Eli, be good. I promise." The door clicked shut. Rachel was gone. Now it was just Marcus and the boy. The test had begun. For several long minutes, there was only silence. Marcus kept his breathing steady, his body completely still. He had played this role many times before, the sleeping victim, unaware and vulnerable. Usually, it didn't take long. Usually, people revealed their true nature within minutes. The only sounds in the room were the rain against the windows, the distant rumble of mixers from the bakery floor below, and the soft ticking of the antique clock Marcus kept on his desk. A gift from his late wife, back when he still believed in gifts given from the heart. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Marcus expected movement. Children were naturally curious, and poor children, he assumed, were naturally hungry for things they couldn't have. He expected the shuffle of feet, the sound of small hands touching things they shouldn't touch. But Eli didn't move. Marcus's neck began to ache from holding his head at the same angle. His left leg had a pins and needles sensation from sitting too still. But he didn't break character. He had patience born from decades of watching and waiting. 5 minutes passed. Then, finally, he heard it, the soft rustle of fabric. The boy was standing up. Here we go, Marcus thought. Here comes the truth. The footsteps were hesitant, uncertain. They moved slowly across the hardwood floor. Marcus could track the boy's position by sound alone. Eli was approaching the chair, getting closer to the money. Marcus's muscles tensed, ready to spring the trap. He visualized the scene. The boy would reach out with his small hand, grab the envelope, and shove it under his shirt. Then Marcus would open his eyes, catch him red-handed, and fire Rachel immediately. Another data point proving his theory about human nature. The footsteps stopped. Eli was standing right beside him now, close enough that Marcus could sense his presence. Marcus waited for the rustle of paper, the grab of small fingers closing around cash. But it didn't come. Instead, something unexpected happened. Marcus felt a small, cold hand gently touch his arm. The touch was feather-light, barely there. Marcus fought every instinct to flinch or react. What is this? Marcus thought. Is he checking if I'm really asleep? Is this some new strategy? The hand withdrew. Then came a sound Marcus hadn't anticipated. A small, sad sigh from the child. "Mr. Chun," Eli whispered. His voice was so quiet it was almost lost beneath the rain. "You look cold." Marcus didn't respond. He added a soft snore, a convincing rumble in his throat. Then came another sound that confused him completely. The zip of a jacket. What is this boy doing? Marcus's mind raced through possibilities. Is he getting comfortable? Is he planning to steal the jacket too? Then Marcus felt something warm and light settle across his legs. It was Eli's jacket, a thin windbreaker that was still slightly damp from the rain outside. The boy was placing it over Marcus's knees like a blanket. The room was drafty. The tall windows let in cold air despite the warmth rising from the ovens below. Marcus hadn't noticed until now, but his hands were actually cold. Eli carefully smoothed the small jacket over the old man's legs. Then he whispered again, speaking to what he believed was a sleeping man. "You shouldn't be cold. My mommy says old people get sick easy when they're cold." Marcus's heart stuttered in his chest. This wasn't part of the script. This wasn't what was supposed to happen. The boy wasn't looking at the money. He was looking at Marcus. He was worried about Marcus. Then Marcus heard movement by the table. He thought. Now it comes. Now that he's distracted me with kindness, he'll take the cash. It's a sophisticated con for a 7-year-old. But the envelope didn't move. Instead, Marcus heard the sound of paper sliding across wood. The envelope being repositioned but not taken. Marcus risked opening his left eye just a crack, a tiny slit hidden by his eyelashes. What he saw stopped his heart. Eli stood by the table, a small, skinny boy with messy black hair and clothes that were clearly secondhand. His sneakers were worn at the toes, held together with duct tape. But his face showed intense, serious concentration. The boy had noticed the envelope hanging off the edge of the table, about to fall. He was pushing it back toward the center, near the lamp, so it wouldn't fall to the floor. Then Eli saw something else. A leather notebook had slipped from Marcus's lap earlier and fallen to the floor. Eli bent down, picked it up, and dusted off the cover with his sleeve. He placed it carefully on the table next to the money. "Safe now," Eli whispered. Then the boy turned and walked back to his corner. He sat down, pulled his knees to his chest, and wrapped his arms around himself. Without his jacket, he was shivering. Marcus lay there, his mind completely blank. For the first time in 20 years, Marcus Chun didn't know what to think. He had set a trap for a rat, but he had caught a dove. Marcus remained frozen in his chair, his mind spinning. Why didn't he take it? The question screamed through his thoughts. "They're poor. I know they're desperately poor. Rachel wears shoes with holes in them. I've seen her pack the same peanut butter sandwich for lunch every single day. Why didn't this boy take the money?" The cynicism that had hardened around Marcus's heart like concrete developed a hairline crack. For 2 decades, Marcus had tested people. He tested his children by making them think he was rewriting his will, just to see if they'd visit more often. They hadn't. He'd tested his executives by leaving fake confidential documents in the copy room, watching to see who would leak them to competitors. Several had. He'd tested employees with unmarked bills near the registers, hidden cameras recording every theft. Everyone failed. Everyone took. Everyone proved his theory correct. Everyone except this 7-year-old boy shivering in the corner, wrapped in his own small arms because he'd given his only jacket to a sleeping stranger. Before Marcus could process what this meant, the office door burst open. Rachel rushed in, breathless and terrified. She must have run the entire way from the 3rd floor. Her face was pale, her dark hair disheveled. She looked at the corner first, saw Eli sitting there shivering without his jacket. Then her eyes moved to the leather chair. She saw her son's cheap, rain-dampened jacket draped across the billionaire's expensive dress pants. She saw the envelope of money on the table. Her hands flew to her mouth. Marcus watched through his barely closed eyes as Rachel's face transformed from confusion to horror. She thought the worst. She thought Eli had been bothering him. She thought her son had tried to steal and was now trying to cover it up somehow. "Eli," she hissed, her voice sharp with panic. She rushed to the boy and grabbed his arm, pulling him to his feet roughly. "What did you do? Why is your coat on him? Did you touch him? Did you touch that money?" Eli looked up at his mother with wide, innocent eyes. "No, Mommy. He looked cold, so I want to keep him warm. And the paper was falling, so I fixed it." "Oh, God," Rachel moaned, tears instantly filling her eyes. "He's going to wake up. He's going to fire us. We're ruined, Eli. I told you not to move. I told you." Rachel began frantically pulling the jacket off Marcus's legs, her hands shaking so badly she nearly knocked over the lamp. "I'm sorry," she was whispering to the man she believed was asleep. "I'm so sorry. Please don't wake up. Please." Marcus felt the jacket being ripped away. He felt the mother's raw terror radiating like heat. Rachel wasn't afraid of a monster or a criminal. She was afraid of him. She was afraid of the man with power, the man who controlled her livelihood, the man who could destroy her life with a single word. Rachel was scared because she'd seen what happened to employees who displeased Marcus Chin. He had fired his head baker for taking a single loaf of day-old bread home without permission, even though the bread would have been thrown away. He had terminated his delivery driver for being 10 minutes late due to his daughter's emergency. He had dismissed a 20-year veteran for questioning one of his decisions in a meeting. Marcus Chun was known for being brilliant, successful, and absolutely merciless. He showed no mercy because he believed the world showed him none. And now this terrified woman was backing toward the door, clutching her 7-year-old son to her chest, preparing to run from the building before the monster could wake up. In that moment, watching her terror, Marcus realized something he'd been blind to for years. He had become the villain, not a victim of other people's greed, but the source of their fear. He hadn't been protecting himself from theft. He'd been creating an environment where kindness itself was seen as a crime. A simple act from a child, covering a cold man with a jacket, was being treated as a catastrophe because Marcus had made himself into something people were afraid to help. The crack in his heart widened. Marcus decided it was time to wake up, but he would not wake up as the man he'd been. He would wake up as someone different, or at least he would try. He let out a loud, theatrical groan and shifted in his chair. Rachel froze. She clutched Eli tighter, backing toward the door like a deer caught in headlights. Marcus opened his eyes. He blinked a few times, adjusting to the light. He looked at the ceiling, then slowly lowered his gaze to the terrified woman and small boy by the door. He put on his best grumpy expression. He scowled, his thick gray eyebrows drawing together. "What?" Marcus grumbled, his voice rough and harsh. "What is all this noise? Can't a man rest in his own office?" I am so sorry, Mr. Chun," Rachel stammered, bowing her head. "I was just cleaning. This is my son. The schools were closed because of the storm. I had no choice. We're leaving right now. Please, sir, don't fire me. I'll take him outside. He won't bother you again. Please, I need this job." Marcus stared at them. He looked deliberately at the envelope of money on the table, exactly where Eli had carefully pushed it to safety. Then he looked at the boy, who was trembling, not from cold anymore, but from fear of the angry old man. Marcus sat up straighter in his chair. He reached out slowly and picked up the envelope of money. He tapped it against his palm, making a show of checking it. Rachel squeezed her eyes shut, clearly expecting him to accuse them of attempted theft. "Boy," Marcus said, his voice booming. Eli peeked out from behind his mother's leg. "Yes, sir. Come here." Rachel gripped Eli's shoulder tighter, protective. "Sir, he didn't mean to," I said. Marcus raised his voice. "Come here." Eli gently pulled away from his mother. He walked slowly toward the leather chair, his small hands trembling at his sides. He stopped right in front of Marcus's knees. Marcus leaned forward, bringing his face inches from the boy's. He looked deep into Eli's dark brown eyes, searching for a lie, searching for the greed he was certain existed in everyone. "Did you put your jacket on me?" Marcus asked. Eli swallowed hard. "Yes, sir." "Why?" Marcus's voice was harsh. "I'm a stranger. I'm rich. I have a whole closet full of coats upstairs. Why would you give me your jacket?" Eli looked down at his taped-together sneakers, then back up at Marcus. His voice was small but honest. "Because you look cold, sir. My mommy says when someone is cold, you give them a blanket, even if they're rich. Cold is cold. Cold is cold." Such a simple truth. Such devastating logic. Marcus stared at the boy. He looked past Eli at Rachel, who was holding her breath, tears streaming down her face. "What's your name?" Marcus asked, his voice softening just a fraction. "Eli, sir." Marcus nodded slowly. He looked at the money in his hand, then at the open door. The test wasn't over. In fact, it had just entered its second phase. This boy had passed the honesty test. But Marcus wanted to know more. He wanted to know if this was just luck, a fluke, or if this child genuinely possessed something Marcus had forgotten existed, a pure heart. Marcus shoved the money into his jacket pocket. "You woke me up," he grunted, returning to his grumpy persona. "I hate being woken up." Rachel let out a small, choked sob. "We're leaving, sir. Right now." "No," Marcus said sharply. "You're not leaving." "We're leaving, sir," Rachel repeated, already reaching for the door handle. "Stop." Marcus's voice cracked like a whip across the room. Rachel froze. She didn't dare take another step. She turned around slowly, her face drained of all color. "I didn't say you could leave," Marcus growled. He pointed a shaking finger at the leather chair where he'd been sitting. "Look at this." Rachel looked. There was a small, dark, damp spot on the leather where Eli's wet jacket had rested. "My chair," Marcus said, his voice dripping with manufactured anger. "This is Italian leather. It costs $300 a yard to reupholster, and now it's wet. It's ruined." I'll dry it, sir," Rachel stammered. "I'll get a towel right now." "Water stains leather permanently," Marcus lied smoothly. He stood up, leaning on his desk, looming over the terrified mother. "You can't just dry it. It needs professional restoration. That will cost at least $500. This was the second part of Marcus's test. He wanted to see if the pressure would break their bond. He wanted to see if Rachel would turn on her son in anger. He wanted to see if she would scream at Eli for costing her money she couldn't possibly afford. Marcus had seen it happen before. Pressure revealed true character. Desperation made people cruel. Rachel looked at the damp spot, then looked back at Marcus. More tears streamed down her face. "Mr. Chun, please," she begged. "I don't have $500. I haven't even been paid for this month yet. Please take it from my wages. I'll work for free for as long as it takes. Just please don't hurt my boy." She was offering to work for free. That was unexpected. But Marcus wasn't satisfied yet. He looked down at Eli. "And you," Marcus said to the boy, making his voice as cold as possible. "You caused this damage. What do you have to say for yourself?" Eli stepped forward, away from his mother's protective grasp. He wasn't crying. His small face was very serious, more serious than any 7-year-old's face should be. He reached into his pocket with determination. "I don't have $500, Eli said softly, his voice steady despite the fear Marcus could see in his eyes. "But I have this." Eli pulled his hand out of his pocket. He opened his small fingers carefully, like he was holding something incredibly precious. In the center of his palm sat a small, battered toy car. It was a red sports car, or at least it used to be red. The paint was chipped and faded. One of the wheels was completely missing. The windshield had a crack across it. The plastic was scratched and worn from years of play. To anyone else, it would look like garbage. Something found at the bottom of a toy box, something ready to be thrown away. But the way Eli held it, with both hands now, cradling it gently, it looked like he was holding a bar of gold. "This is Lightning Bolt," Eli explained, his voice taking on a reverent tone. "He's the fastest car in the whole world. He was my daddy's when he was little. Before he went to heaven." Marcus felt something twist in his chest. "Mommy gave Lightning Bolt to me after the accident," Eli continued. "She said Daddy would want to have him. I take him everywhere. He sleeps next to my pillow." "Eli, no," Rachel gasped. "You don't have to do this. It's okay. It's okay, Mommy," Eli said bravely. He looked up at Marcus with those clear, honest eyes. "You can have Lightning Bolt to pay for the chair. He's my best friend, but you're mad, and I don't want you to be mad at Mommy. It's my fault." Eli reached out with both hands and placed the 3-wheeled toy car on Marcus's expensive wooden desk, right next to the leather notebook he'd rescued from the floor. Marcus stared at the toy. He suddenly found it difficult to breathe. The room felt too small, the air too thick. He looked at the envelope in his jacket pocket. $5,000. More money than Rachel probably made in 3 months. More money than some people saw in a year. Then he looked at the broken toy car on his desk. This boy was offering his most precious possession, the last physical connection to his dead father, the one toy that meant everything to him. He was giving it up to fix a mistake he'd made out of pure kindness. He was sacrificing the only treasure he owned to save his mother's job. Marcus's heart, frozen solid for 20 years, cracked wide open. The pain was sharp and immediate, like blood returning to a limb that had fallen asleep. He realized, in that moment, that this boy who had nothing was richer than Marcus would ever be. Marcus had millions of dollars. He had properties, businesses, investments, luxury cars, designer clothes, expensive watches. But he would never, could never, sacrifice his favorite possession for anyone. He hoarded everything. He trusted no one with anything. This child was 7 years old and already understood something Marcus had forgotten. That love was worth more than leather chairs, more than money, more than pride. The silence stretched out. The rain continued hammering against the windows. Somewhere below, the ovens rumbled with their daily work. Marcus picked up the toy car with trembling hands. He turned it over, examining the missing wheel, the faded paint, the scratches from years of play. "You would give me this?" Marcus's voice was no longer a growl. It was barely a whisper. "For a wet chair?" "Yes, sir," Eli said. "Is it enough? Is it enough?" The question echoed in Marcus's mind. Marcus closed his eyes. He thought about his own children. His daughter, Melissa, who only called when she needed money for her shopping trips to Paris. His son, David, who'd asked for a down payment on a 3rd vacation home. His younger son, Robert, who'd sent him a birthday card 2 months late with someone else's name still visible under the whiteout. They gave him nothing. They only took. This boy, this stranger's child, was offering everything. Yes, Marcus whispered, opening his eyes. They were wet. For the first time in years, tears threatened to fall. Yes, Eli. It's enough. It's more than enough. Marcus slumped back into his chair. The act was over. The test was finished. He couldn't play the villain anymore. He felt exhausted, not from age, but from the crushing weight of his own guilt, his own realization of what he'd become. Rachel, Marcus said, his voice completely changed. No longer harsh, but tired. Human. Sit down. Rachel looked confused by the sudden shift in his tone. Sir, please, just sit. Marcus's voice softened even more. Stop looking at me like I'm going to destroy you. Rachel hesitantly sat on the edge of the office sofa, pulling Eli onto her lap protectively. The boy curled against his mother, both of them still trembling. Marcus looked at the toy car in his hand. He spun the remaining wheels with his thumb. They squeaked slightly, worn from years of play. I have a confession to make, Marcus said quietly, looking at the floor. The chair isn't ruined. It's just water. It will dry in an hour. Rachel let out a long breath she'd been holding. Oh, thank God. And Marcus continued, forcing himself to look up at them. I wasn't asleep. Rachel's eyes went wide. You weren't. No. Marcus shook his head. I was pretending. I left that money on the table on purpose. I wanted to catch you. I wanted to see if you would steal it. Rachel's expression changed from relief to hurt. She pulled Eli closer. You were testing us? Like we're criminals. Yes, Marcus admitted. The word tasted bitter. I'm a bitter old man, Rachel. I've been testing people for years. I thought everyone was a thief. I thought everyone had a price. He pointed a shaking finger at Eli, who was watching him with those impossibly clear eyes. But Marcus's voice cracked. He didn't take the money. He didn't even look at it. He saw me and thought I was cold. So he covered me with his jacket. Marcus wiped a tear from his cheek. He didn't care anymore that his employee was watching him cry. And then Marcus continued, his voice breaking. Then he offered me his father's car, the one thing he treasures most in the world, to fix a chair that wasn't even damaged, to protect his mother from my anger. Marcus stood up slowly, his legs unsteady. He walked to the window, looking out at the rain-soaked street below. I've lost my way, he whispered. I have millions of dollars, but I'm bankrupt. You have nothing, yet you've raised a king. He turned back to face them. The test is over, and you passed. Both of you. Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the thick envelope of money. He walked over to Rachel and held it out to her. Take this. Rachel shook her head vigorously. No, sir. I don't want your money. I just want to work. I want to earn my pay honestly. Take it, Marcus insisted. It's not charity. It's a bonus. It's payment for the lesson your son just taught me. The most valuable lesson I've learned in 20 years. Rachel hesitated. She looked at the money, then at Eli's worn-out shoes held together with duct tape, his thin jacket that had been soaked through. Please, Marcus said softly. Buy him a warm coat. Buy him shoes that fit. Get yourself a bed that doesn't hurt your back. Take it. Rachel reached out with trembling hands and took the envelope. Thank you, Mr. Chun. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet, Marcus said. A small, genuine smile touched his lips for the first time in years. I have a business proposition. For Eli. Eli looked up, his eyes bright with surprise. For me? Yes, Marcus said. He held up the little toy car. I'm going to keep Lightning Bolt. He's mine now. You gave him to me as payment. Eli's face fell slightly, but he nodded with serious acceptance. Okay, a deal is a deal. But, Marcus continued, I can't keep a car with 3 wheels. It's not right. It needs to be fixed. And I need someone to help me fix things around here. Not just toys. I need someone to help me fix myself. Marcus knelt down, a painful movement for his old knees, until he was eye level with the 7-year-old. Eli, how would you like to come here every day after school? You can sit in this office. You can do your homework at that desk. You can eat fresh bread from the ovens. And you can teach this grumpy old man how to be kind again. Marcus paused. In exchange, I'll pay for your school. all the way through college. I'll set up a fund that can never be touched, never be taken away. Your education, guaranteed. Does that sound fair?" Eli looked at his mother. Rachel was crying openly now, her hand covering her mouth. She nodded through her tears. Eli looked back at Marcus. He smiled, a gap-toothed, beautiful, innocent smile that lit up the whole room. "Deal," Eli said. He held out his small hand. Marcus Chun, the billionaire who trusted no one, who had tested and suspected and doubted every human being who crossed his path, took that small hand in his and shook it. For the first time in 20 years, Marcus felt hope. 10 years passed like pages turning in a book. The Chin Bakery headquarters was no longer a cold, silent fortress. The heavy curtains that had blocked the windows were torn down, letting sunlight pour into every room. The industrial gray walls were painted warm colors, soft yellows and creams, the colors of fresh bread. The warehouse garden, once a neglected patch of weeds and broken concrete, now bloomed with flowers year-round. Marcus had hired a full-time gardener, and every morning he took walks through the paths, greeting the roses and lavender by name like old friends. Inside the building, laughter echoed through the hallways. Marcus had loosened his rules. Employees brought their children to work when schools closed. The break room was filled with comfortable furniture instead of harsh metal chairs. Marcus learned his workers' names, asked about their families, gave unexpected bonuses when someone's car broke down or a medical bill arrived. The change hadn't happened overnight. It had been gradual, like dawn breaking after a long night. Eli had been the catalyst. Every day after school, the boy came to the bakery. He'd sit in Marcus's office, doing his homework at the large wooden desk while Marcus worked on business plans. They'd talk about everything: math problems, history lessons, why birds flew in V formations, what made bread rise. Marcus taught Eli about business. Eli taught Marcus about trust. On weekends, they go to baseball games. Marcus, who hadn't attended a sporting event in 15 years, found himself cheering in the stands, eating hot dogs, and explaining the infield fly rule to the teenager beside him. Rachel had blossomed too. With financial security for the first time in years, the constant worry had lifted from her shoulders. Marcus had promoted her to head of his charitable foundation, a new organization he'd created to help families like hers. The Chin Foundation provided emergency funds to families of workers injured on the job. It gave scholarships to children of service workers. It funded job training programs and built affordable housing. Rachel managed millions of dollars with the same careful honesty she'd shown when she cleaned his office. Marcus trusted her completely, and that trust was never betrayed. Now, on a warm September afternoon, the office was full of people. But they weren't there for a celebration. They were there to say goodbye. Marcus Chun had passed away peacefully 3 days ago. He had died in his sleep in the leather chair where the test had taken place a decade before. He was 85 years old. The doctor said his heart simply stopped, worn out after a long, full life. But those who knew Marcus understood the truth. His heart had been broken for 20 years, and it had taken 10 years of healing before it was strong enough to rest. The reading of the will was about to begin. Eli stood by the window, now 17 years old. He'd grown tall and strong, his baby face replaced by the features of a young man. He wore a suit that Marcus had bought him for college interviews. He'd been accepted to Boston University with a full scholarship from the Chin Foundation, though he didn't need it. Marcus had already paid for everything. Eli looked out at the garden where his mother was standing, arranging flowers on a table. Rachel was 42 now, healthy and happy. She wore professional clothing instead of cleaning uniforms. She no longer looked tired. The office door opened, and a lawyer entered with a briefcase. Behind him came Marcus's biological children. Eli had met them only once before, at a company holiday party 5 years ago. They'd looked at him with suspicion and barely disguised contempt. The widow's son, the charity case, the one who'd stolen their father's attention. There were 3 of them. Melissa, 45, dressed in designer clothes and checking her phone constantly. David, 43, looking impatient and bored. Robert, 39, whispering to his siblings about selling the building. They barely glanced at Eli as they took seats on the other side of the room. The lawyer, Mr. Harrison, a kind man in his 60s who'd known Marcus for 30 years, cleared his throat. Thank you all for coming. I'll now read the last will and testament of Marcus Chun. Mr. Harrison opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder containing several documents. He adjusted his reading glasses and began. I, Marcus Chun, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament, revoking all previous wills and codicils. The room was silent except for the ticking of the antique clock. To my children, Melissa, David, and Robert, I leave the trust funds that were established for you at birth. These trusts currently contain approximately $3 million each, which will be distributed according to the terms already established. The three siblings shifted in their seats. Melissa stopped checking her phone. David leaned forward slightly. You have never visited me without asking for money. Mr. Harrison continued reading Marcus's words. You never called to ask how I was feeling. You didn't attend my birthday dinners unless they were mandatory for inheritance purposes. I assumed that money is all you ever wanted from me, so money is what you'll receive. I hope it brings you the happiness you've been searching for. The lawyer paused. The trust will pay out in full upon the reading of this will. You are free to leave at any time. The three children stood up immediately. They looked relieved, satisfied. $9 million total. They'd expected to have to split everything, and this way they each got their full share. Wait, Mr. Harrison said. There is more. They paused, turning back with curious expressions. To the remainder of my estate, my 40% ownership of Chun Bakery, this building and property, my personal investments, my savings accounts, and all other assets not previously mentioned. I leave everything to the one person who gave me something when I had nothing. The children looked confused. Who? Melissa demanded. We're his family. I leave everything. The lawyer continued reading, to Eli Kim. The room erupted. What? David shouted. This is a joke. He's the cleaning woman's son. This can't be legal. He tricked our father. Robert yelled. This is fraud. We'll contest this. He manipulated a senile old man. Melissa added, her voice shrill. Eli didn't move from his position by the window. He didn't say a word. He simply held something in his hand, turning it over and over. The toy car. Lightning bolt. Marcus had given it back to him 2 years ago, on Eli's 15th birthday. But he'd done something to it first. He'd had a master craftsman repair it, adding a new wheel made of solid gold. Mr. Harrison raised his hand. Please, everyone, please sit down. Mr. Chen anticipated your reaction. He left a letter explaining his decision. He wanted me to read it aloud. The three children reluctantly sat, their faces red with anger. Rachel had come in from the garden during the commotion. She stood in the doorway, her hand over her mouth, tears already forming. Mr. Harrison unfolded a handwritten letter, Marcus's distinctive script, written in the shaky hand of his final months. To my children, and to anyone who questions my decision, the lawyer read, you measure wealth in money and property. You think I've lost my mind, giving everything to a boy who isn't my blood. But you're wrong about everything. 10 years ago, I was spiritually bankrupt. I was a bitter, cruel man who trusted no one and loved nothing. I was rich in money, but dying from loneliness. I was freezing from the inside out, and I didn't even know it. A 7-year-old boy saw me shivering. He didn't see a billionaire. He didn't see an opportunity. He saw a human being who was cold. So he gave me his jacket, the only one he owned. He protected my money when he could have stolen it. He had every reason to take it. His mother was struggling. He had holes in his shoes, but he didn't even consider it. But the real moment, the moment that changed my life, was when he gave me his most precious possession, a broken toy car that belonged to his dead father. He gave me everything he had to save his mother from my manufactured anger. That day, Eli taught me that the poorest pocket can hold the richest heart. The lawyer's voice wavered slightly. Even he was moved by the words. Eli saved my life. Marcus's letter continued. Not from death, but from something worse, a life without love. He gave me 10 years of laughter, companionship, and purpose. He taught me how to be human again. So I leave him my fortune. Not because he asked for it. He never did. Not because he manipulated me. He never tried. But because he gave me back my soul, and money is a small trade for that. Mr. Harrison folded the letter carefully. The room remained silent for a long moment. Melissa was the first to speak, her voice cold. This is emotional manipulation. We're contesting this will. No judge will uphold this. You're welcome to try, Mr. Harrison said calmly. But I should inform you that Mr. Chan worked with 3 different law firms to ensure this will is absolutely ironclad. Every possible challenge has been anticipated and addressed. He was very thorough. David stood up, his face red. Come on, we're getting lawyers. Real lawyers. Not this family friend nonsense. The 3 siblings stormed out of the office, their expensive shoes clicking on the hardwood floors. The door slammed behind them. They would try to contest the will. They would hire attorneys and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars fighting. But 18 months later, a judge would rule in Eli's favor, calling Marcus's will one of the most clearly reasoned and legally sound documents he'd ever reviewed. But that was in the future. Now, in this moment, the office was quiet again. Rachel walked over to her son. Eli, baby, are you okay? Eli looked at her, and she saw tears running down his face. I don't want his money, Mom, Eli said softly. I just want him back. I want to tell him about my calculus test. I want to watch the Red Sox game with him this weekend like we always do. I want. His voice broke. Rachel pulled him into a hug, and Eli, now taller than his mother, bent down and cried in her shoulder like he was 7 years old again. Mr. Harrison approached quietly. Eli, there's one more thing. Mr. Chin left this for you personally. He made me promise to give it to you after the will was read. The lawyer held out a small velvet box. Eli wiped his eyes and took it. His hands were shaking as he opened it. Inside, resting on white silk, was the original lightning bolt. The broken toy car exactly as Eli had given it to Marcus 10 years ago. 3 wheels, chipped paint, scratched plastic. But Marcus had done something extraordinary. He'd had the car professionally preserved in a clear acrylic case, protecting it forever. And mounted on a small brass plaque beneath, it were words engraved in Marcus's handwriting. This car is worth more than everything I own. It taught me that love is not measured in money, but in sacrifice. Thank you for saving me. Marcus. Eli held the case carefully, running his fingers over the acrylic surface. He kept both. Eli whispered. The broken one and the fixed one? Yes, Mr. Harrison said gently. He told me the broken one reminded him of who he used to be, damaged, incomplete. The fixed one reminded him of who he became, restored. He wanted you to have a broken one because he said you're the one who does the fixing. You fix broken things. Broken cars. Broken men. Eli looked at his mother, then at Mr. Harrison. What am I supposed to do with all this? Eli asked, gesturing vaguely at everything. The building, the company, the fortune. I'm 17. I don't know how to run a bakery empire. Rachel smiled through her tears. You don't have to figure out today, baby. Mr. Chun set everything up with trustees and advisors. The company will run itself for years. You can finish high school, go to college, learn, grow up. The money will wait. And when you're ready, Mr. Harrison added, you'll know what to do. Mr. Chun believed that completely. He said you have something that can't be taught in business school. You have a good heart. The rest is just details. Eli walked over to the leather chair where Marcus had spent his final years. He placed the acrylic case on the side table next to it, right beside the lamp. Safe now, Eli whispered, repeating the words he'd said as a 7-year-old. He stood there for a moment, looking at the chair, remembering the man who'd sit there and help him with homework, who'd tell stories about building the business from nothing, who'd become the grandfather Eli never had. Thank you, Marcus, Eli said quietly, for everything. I promise I'll make you proud. I promise I won't waste this. I promise I'll use it to help people the way you started helping people. Rachel came and stood beside her son. They both looked at the empty chair. Outside, the September sun was setting, painting the office in golden light. In the garden below, the flowers Marcus had planted were in full bloom. Life goes on. But love, real love, the kind that gives without expecting anything back, that lasts forever. 5 years passed. Eli was 22 now, graduated from Boston University with degrees in both business and social work. But he learned his most important lessons from Marcus Chun during their afternoons in that office. The Chun bakery empire had grown, but it had also transformed. Every bakery location now had a policy. Day-old bread was never thrown away. It was donated to homeless shelters and food banks. Any employee going through financial hardship could apply for emergency grants, no questions asked. The company paid for employees' children to attend college. But Eli's greatest achievement was something Marcus would have loved. In the old warehouse district where Marcus had built his first bakery, Eli had created the Chun Center for Second Chances. It was a job training program for people who'd made mistakes, ex-convicts, recovering addicts, single parents who'd been fired for bringing their kids to work. The center taught them to bake. It taught them business skills. But more importantly, it gave them dignity and a paycheck while they learned. On the wall of the center's entrance hung a photograph. Marcus Chun, age 75, sitting in his leather chair, smiling, genuinely smiling, with his arm around a 7-year-old boy in a too-thin jacket. Below the photograph was a quote, "The poorest pocket can hold the richest heart." Marcus Chun. Today was the center's opening ceremony. Hundreds of people crowded into the space. Employees, reporters, city officials, and the first graduating class of trainees. Eli stood at the podium, nervous despite all his practice speeches in Marcus's office. 5 years ago, Eli began, "I inherited a fortune. People said I was lucky. They said I'd won the lottery. But they were wrong." He paused, looking out at the crowd. "I was lucky 10 years ago when a bitter old man decided to test my mother and me. He pretended to be asleep. He left money on a table, expecting us to steal it. He was so convinced that everyone was a thief that he'd set a trap. But something unexpected happened. I didn't see the money. I saw a cold man who looked sick, so I gave him my jacket." Eli pulled the acrylic case from his pocket. He carried it everywhere now, like Marcus had carried his late wife's photograph. I also gave him this, a broken toy car. It was all I had, and that broke Marcus's heart, but in a good way. It cracked open the shell he'd built around himself. Marcus could have fired my mother that day. He could have called us thieves and thrown us out. Instead, he took a chance on kindness. He bet everything that people could change, that he could change. And he did change. He spent his last 10 years giving back everything he'd hoarded. Not just money. He gave his time, his attention, his love. Eli's voice wavered. "Marcus taught me that wealth isn't about what you keep. It's about what you give away. It's about seeing people when they're cold and giving them your jacket, even if it's the only one you have." So this center isn't named after Marcus to honor a dead billionaire. It's named after him to honor what he became. A man who learned that kindness is the only currency that matters. The crowd applauded. Rachel, now the director of the Chin Foundation, stood in the front row, tears streaming down her face just like they had 10 years ago. After the ceremony, a young woman approached Eli. She was maybe 19, thin, with tired eyes and a baby on her hip. "Mr. Kim," she said hesitantly, "I'm Jenny. I'm starting the training program next week. I just wanted to say thank you. I was fired from my last 3 jobs for bringing my daughter to work. I couldn't afford daycare. Everyone said I was irresponsible, but your program has daycare included and..." Her voice broke. "You're giving me a chance when everyone else gave up on me." Eli looked at the baby, then at Jenny's worn-out shoes, her too-thin jacket. He saw himself. He saw his mother. He saw everyone Marcus had helped. "You're not irresponsible," Eli said gently. "You're a mother doing everything you can. And that's exactly who this place is for." He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. Inside was a gift card for the children's clothing store down the street. "Get her a warm coat," Eli said, pressing it into Jenny's hand. "Winter's coming." Jenny stared at the envelope, then at Eli. "Why? You don't even know me." Eli smiled, thinking of Marcus, thinking of that rainy day a decade ago. "Because someone once taught me that cold is cold. Rich or poor, everyone deserves warmth." As Jenny walked away, clutching the envelope and her baby, Eli looked up at the sky. Somewhere, he liked to imagine, Marcus Chun was smiling. The broken toy car had saved a bitter old man. The bitter old man had saved a struggling family, and now that family was saving hundreds more. Kindness multiplies. It echoes forward through time, touching lives that haven't even been born yet. That was Marcus's true legacy. Not the bakeries or the money, but the lesson that a single act of goodness can change the world. The end. The moral of the story. Kindness is an investment that never fails to pay dividends. In a world where everyone is racing to take, those who choose to give are the ones who truly change everything. Marcus Chun had all the money in the world, but he was spiritually bankrupt until a child taught him how to love. Never underestimate the power of a small act of goodness. A jacket offered to a stranger, a kind word given freely, a sacrifice made without expecting anything in return. These moments can melt the coldest hearts and transform the darkest souls. When you give from your heart, especially when you have so little to give, you plant seeds that grow into forests. Eli didn't buy his success. He earned it with kindness, one generous moment at a time. Thank you for watching this story of transformation and hope. If it touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Leave a comment below telling us about a time someone's kindness changed your life. Remember, the poorest pocket can hold the richest heart. See you in the next story.